Welcome to A Right to Know. I'm your host and producer, Sherry B. And wow, do we have an epic series for you forthcoming in 20 parts titled The Great Awakening, an expose of history's hidden power structures as we uncover and unravel true history of this spiritual battle we are currently in and touch on certain points also from a biblical perspective. In this intro episode, we'll give you a brief overview of what we'll be covering. So make sure to follow the channel so that you'll be informed as new episodes are posted. Today and in the coming weeks, we'll be providing you with a good base to help shed light on who, what, where, how, when, and why this matrix and way of life in which we've been existing was created, and what we can do to shift our current and future civilization into the new golden age of health, happiness, abundance, love, peace, and true sovereignty for all who wish to go there. Our mission is getting to the truth. Some things we'll cover you may or may not be familiar with, and some things may shock some of you. In order to change the trajectory of humankind and our planet towards the light and this new golden age, we must be willing to learn and therefore open our minds from many years of programming. We also need to be aware of those trigger words that were intentionally planted to close our minds from exploration and even discernment. As an example, I'm sure you've all heard of terms such as conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat, and now the latest on a global scale is the trigger word racist. These words are psyops, psychological operations, purposefully planted in the media to have you not question the deep state's false narratives so that they can continue with their evil agendas. As Jim Pugh mentions in his expose upon which this series is based, quote, "There are a lot of secrets out there. Most of them, if known, would change the world because after all, knowledge is power." End quote. We'll discuss what has been the hierarchy of control and who has been at the top of the societal pyramid. Indeed, society's leaders have lied to us for centuries and buried the truth. Well, as Q states, the storm has arrived. The world is not what we've been made to believe, so our knowledge and education are essential for a complete paradigm shift. We are bringing to you in this series a trove of truth so that you can connect the dots and do your homework. The truth is right here at our fingertips, and remember, it is darkest before the dawn, so hang in there and make sure to join me and our guest of honor, whom I'll introduce, Jim Pugh, on this ride of the Great Awakening, an expose. I'm honored to be joined and co-producing this series with Mr. James Pugh. James, or Jim Pugh, is an MBA, life coach, and instructor of business-related courses. For the past 35 years, Jim has studied the theological concepts of ancient scriptures and the practical application in today's world. In his international business travels, he took the time to speak to leaders of various religious denominations to create a perspective of cultural religious beliefs today. In interviews and broadcasts, Jim has taught a spiritual perspective of world history and most recently has addressed, as we will in this series, the current spiritual war the world is experiencing. Jim lectures about spiritual concepts and history and continues to develop for himself an understanding of God's rules, principles, and laws and how to apply those to the nasty and chaotic world that we live in. It is his hope that he may be a grain of sand with a loud voice to provide hope to all people who may listen. And his website, which we'll post, is godisgovernment.com. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Jim Pugh to your maiden voyage to A Right to Know. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jim, let's just start off a couple of things that we need to start off with. First, if you can tell us a little bit about what motivated you, and I don't know if there were other participants in creating and writing this expose upon which our series is based, and why at such a time as this? Why do you think it's so significant and important to share this information at such a time as this?
Well, how this took place is I worked in the banking industry, and I knew that that there was going to be a financial reset, and this was at the time that President Obama was in office, because the fiat currency in a debt system has a life, and that life had come to its end, and they needed a reset to actually shift the world in recreating a set currency. And they had begun to do that by shifting all of the economics over to China. And I knew that process was going on. So I wanted to be involved. That my background is investment banking, and I wanted to get involved with it because history, as we'll get into in a lot of detail, history shows that the wealth is made after one of these resets take place. That's how the elite obtain a lot of wealth. And so I wanted to be involved in that. And I was briefed on the process. And at the time that, at the time of Obama's second term, I came to the knowledge that there was going to be not only a financial reset around the world, but there was going to be a geopolitical reset, one way or the other. And I'm not going to get into all that. I'm going to leave that for the show. But there was going to be a geopolitical reset, and I understood at that time that there had been a selection of an individual to take the presidency, and in a very short order, I knew who that was. And I began to then cultivate the relationships that I needed to actually be able to participate in some of these activities that are going on today. One of the biggest issues that I saw in this was the fact that in this shift, what was going to be the long pole in the tent was the knowledge base of people. And so with my understanding of what was going on, I was asked to put together a series of educational pieces that would bring the truth to a large number of people. And in doing so, I wrote 19 pieces of information where I could self-direct people to do their own research and understand how to do that. And so what got started as something that I wanted to participate in became a very much larger situation that I was involved with, which was the education of people. So not only did I write articles that were published throughout the internet and given to specific individuals as well, I also began to do a podcast with people who had a great following, like Bards FM, Sovereign Radio, and people like that would work in conjunction, much like what you and I are doing now, in conjunction to actually put forth an educational platform to the audience that those people have. And I can say that in some of what we're going to cover, there was 2 episodes of Bards FM that we actually hit more than 2 million views in each one of them. So the information is getting out, and that's the reason why I did what I did.
Interesting. And when you wrote this expose, Jim, a couple of years back, and I think it was after this time during the Obama administration. I think it was a couple of years, I would guess, after that, if my time
was in 2016 when I wrote this. So
Okay, and did you do it on your own? Were you,
No, I did it on my own. I did it. The expose was written on my own base of knowledge and experience, but in those I actually put other examples. So I searched the internet for for videos or documents that I could actually attach to this expose, so that individuals could actually use them to further their detail of information. And also, it gave them an avenue to understand how to do their own research to gain the truth.
okay. There's something I want to talk about right up front at the beginning of this series, and then I'm going to go back to asking you a question before we go into giving a brief summary of each of the 19 episodes that we're going to be doing. Um, I just want to lay out here, and you can comment on it if you'd like. I mentioned at the top of the show in the intro the term, for example, conspiracy theory. Now, conspiracy theory, from my research, and I did interview Lance DeHaven Smith, who wrote the book based on the terminology and the PSYOP, the psychological operation that was created by the CIA, conspiracy theory. It was created by the CIA out of the Warren Commission during the JFK assassination because they didn't want we the people to be questioning that there was a lone shooter, which was not true. They wanted to close people's minds, a psychological operation. Close your minds or everyone's going to laugh at you. Just like I mentioned the term tinfoil hat. Don't question that there might possibly be other beings besides we humans on planet Earth, that in the multiverse, in the universe, there couldn't possibly be other beings. If you even think about that, we're going to call you a tinfoil, you're wearing a tinfoil hat, and we're going to shame you and embarrass you so you shut the heck up. And then the biggest psyop that I see right now, Jim, and I've been after, I lived in, I've been traveling around the world, and I've been traveling around Europe, especially after my home and everything burnt down in the Pacific Palisades, California, starting January 7th of 2025. So the biggest psyop that I see right now, the biggest trigger term right now all over the globe is the word racist. So that is like, don't you dare say anything. If there are people flooding into your country and they're raping and pillaging, you can't say anything or you'll be considered, a racist, for example. So I just want people to be open as we go into the series, Jim, that we're talking truth. Some of the things might seem surprising to some people. A lot of my audience are going to be familiar with much of this. Even some of the things I have to say, and I've been digging deep for years, I learned from reading your expose. So I'm really excited about it. Do you want to comment anything about that before I go to my next question to you?
Well, we're going to get into a lot of terms like conspiracy theory and racist and things like that in this, because that is part of the programming that world governments have put us in, because they wanted to make sure that they could continue to enslave us. So, and they do that in order for us not to pay attention to what is really going on in the world. So racist is a term. Islamophobia is another. We can go into a lot of those terms that they're using, but they're all central focused on one thing, and that thing is to divide us. And if we're divided, they can conquer us. If we're unified, they can't. And so they have used everything in Lucifer's playbook in order to divide and conquer the world. And what at least you're going to hear from me throughout this series is the truth about why we're where we are, which is a spiritual war, and how we got here, and what is the truth. And so we're going to talk about all that.
Okay, awesome. So right before we go into talking about just a summary of each episode so people get an idea of what we're going to be covering over the coming weeks and months, is you mentioned, Jim, that throughout history, over periods of time, there are resets, global currency resets, financial resets. And you said, I believe you didn't use these exact words, but I got the impression you were saying that the deep state does this to their advantage. They
That's
have these
true.
resets.
That's
Okay, well,
true.
how does this reset that we're discussing, if we're coming into the new golden age, how would that differ to be supporting humanity instead of benefiting yet another time the deep state?
Well, this is the first time in our history that the world gets to participate in one of these resets. The resets are typically a very close network of high net worth elite individuals that get involved with that. And this is the first time in world history that the population of the world is going to be involved in the reset. They have either acquired certain assets, some currencies, probably, maybe some historical assets, maybe inherited some historical assets from, their ancestors, and in doing what the world is going to do, they opened up the window of opportunity to allow individuals to participate. And I knew that. That's the reason why I wanted to get involved. And so this is the first time that I, or many of you who are in that same situation, could be involved in this reset. Now, what it makes a reset? Okay, let's just look at that. Every war since the beginning of time was fought, if it was Old Testament wise, it was fought to maintain the integrity of a nation. And the winner of that war took the spoils, which is basically the assets of the country that they conquered. If you fast forward into the age of our country, let's say 1900s or something, and you go back to even the war of the Civil War, it was based not on a separation of slavery. At the heart of that war was economics, money, and those that understood that, basically the Rothschilds financed both sides of that war, just like they have done for centuries. We'll get into who the Rothschilds are in this process as well. But World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the war in Vietnam, Iraq, so forth and so on, when the Allied group went into World War I and fought World War I and won that war, the countries that lost that war went through a reset. Their currency was devalued. Matter of fact, it was actually taken off, and the Allied currency was put in those countries for use until a reconstruction could be done. In the process of the reconstruction, those countries would be allowed to reconstitute their currency. And in doing so, it would be at a value that would allow for them to be pretty much at the same financial strength as they were prior to the war. Well, in the interim, all of these allied countries, the elite would take and obtain, and let's just leave it at that, obtain these countries' currencies. So at the time through the Reconstruction, when they reset their currency, there was a shift in wealth that occurred to the elites because they had that currency. And so they could acquire it at no value, they could acquire it at little value, whatever, but there was a windfall of money that shifted worldwide. And that has happened in every war. If you recall, Bill Clinton balanced the budget, right, in his presidential term. You know how he did that? He did it because of a reset. Vietnam reset. Okay? So this shift that has happened every time a war, go back to World War II, Germany had, well, and we'll get into all of that, but Germany's currency went to zero. They had allied currency. When the German money came back, there was a windfall. Same thing with the Korean War. So wars were built not because of a humanitarian cause. They were built and fought for economics. And at the end, there was a reward for that economic warfare, which is called the reset. And those elites, the bankers, the central bankers, would have a windfall of profit in addition to the debt with interest that they loaned to both sides of the war machine. And so historically, that's the reset. Now, what's happening today? In order to have this global reset, not only from a geopolitical standpoint, but a financial standpoint, and put the people back in charge of the governments, which is what biblical principles are, you have to be at peace, no war. Okay, that's the reason why Trump settled so many wars, because you get it with leverage, of course, but the treaty that all these countries have signed in order to move this geopolitical and financial shift in the world, not to a debt slave system, but out of a debt slave system, the world has to be at peace. And so in that process, they have opened up the window because of disclosure. Okay, if you think about this, if you're moving to world peace and there's things that have got to happen in order to do that, there's got to be certain disclosures made to the people. And if they made all of the disclosures without the people participating in it, the people are going to uprise because they didn't receive any rewards for the enslavery process over 150 years.
Hence, I think that's one of the purposes of us doing this series, is to help awaken people. Absolutely. Also, I believe, well, we're going to go into sort of bullet points of what we're going to be covering in the series. However, you'd mentioned something which I believe, and to my understanding, is that there have actually been assets for we the people that have been held from us. They've also used us, which we won't go into detail. We will in one of the episodes, as almost like trading us as bonds, and we'll talk about all that. But what I'm saying, Jim, is that it's not like when we go through this reset that we're coming up upon, no one knows exactly when it's going to be triggered, but I feel like we're getting very close, is that there are funds that have been in the pipeline, if you will, that have been meant for humanity, whether it be the Chinese elders that have, Socorro, but whether, these accounts that have been, where funds have been held, that was actually meant to be for we the people, that was kept from us, or protected perhaps, but also the system has been hijacked and we've been used and we've been paying off our backs, our blood, sweat, and tears, and, losing lives in wars. We've been paying for all this just horrendous operation of the deep state. But I think there have been funds in there that have been meant for us. And that's part of what they'll bring out during the next revaluation. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct. But it's understanding how those funds got there. That's the truth. See?
Okay.
And those funds that are set there are God's assets that he gave to the people. And that was stolen way back in history. And if you recall, Roosevelt in the United States required everybody who had gold to turn it in. And all of this process was done to allow the cabal, central bankers, to control the assets, because if they control the assets, then we, the people, would never get them. But see, God did something really unique in history. When Solomon's lost his empire and it was split, if you recall in the Bible, God told Solomon that he was going to be the last king and his empire would be split. The assets went to the protectorates of the elders. And what you find is the assets have been accumulated and have been shifted and so forth and so on, but God put in place the ability of a protection system over the assets to not allow the banks to get them. Back then. That's still today. So what your audience needs to understand is the assets that the elders are responsible for, the custodianship, not the uses. They couldn't use it, okay? The custodianship, the protection mechanism is a biblical protection mechanism that has been put in place since the time of Solomon's empire.
Wow. That's just biblical when you think about it, how deep that is. And I don't think many people have understood that. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I know we're going to get into more detail on the different episodes. On the first episode, and I'm not sure if when you map this out, Jim, if you particularly went in a certain order, but we can share that as we go along here. But the first episode, we're going to talk about the U.S. Republic Constitution versus the United States Corporation Constitution. And for some of the audience members, this may be the first time they've heard it. Some may be familiar with it. The United States is a bankrupt country and has been since the early 1900s. The United States is controlled by who? Who have been the rulers of our planet? What have been their mechanisms of control? Is a monetary system one of the main tools of control? Who's the cabal? Who are the bloodline families, secret societies, Illuminati, deep state, globalists, the Vatican Bank, the Federal Reserve? We're going to talk about that. What has become one of the most powerful forms of control? What have been their other control systems, and who are they? Are we in a spiritual battle? Is the storm indeed upon us? And of course, knowledge is power. So for me personally, Jim, I've always been curious and asked questions my entire life, but I've always wanted to know who's really at the top of the pyramid, if you want to call it that, or who's been in the really a power position of directing all the other institutions and entities below. And not that we're going to bring it up right here on the intro, but from reading your expose, that has been made loud and clear to me, which is really great.
You know, as I talked to you when you asked if we could do this together, there's two systems in this world. There's actually two systems, and the Bible is written to tell you about those two systems. One system is directed by holiness through God's system, and the other system is in control of Lucifer and his world system. If you go into the book of Ephesians, we learn after the curse in the Garden of Eden that we are born with a demonic nature controlled by the prince of the power of the air, and our whole character in life is chaos. And through a redemption process, we get into God's system. And that's about as far as I'm going to take the two systems. But the world system at the head of that, if you look at it at a pyramid, at the head is Lucifer, at the very top. If you recall, Jesus said to the Sanhedrin, you are of your father, the devil. Well, who controlled the Sanhedrin? If you understand our history, you understand that we're an extension of Rome. We're extension of the Roman Empire. Our whole legal system is based upon the law of 12 tables, which is Roman law. Our government is structured just like the Roman Empire was structured. All of our legal definitions and our language in the law is Roman law. And so when you understand that the Sanhedrin controlled the Roman Empire, he who controls the money controls the empire. Remember Rothschild said that?
Yes.
Well, do you understand that the Rothschild family ancestry started the Sanhedrin? And that process has been in play since right before the Roman Empire. So when you look at the system, now let's go back to the system. If Christ told the Sanhedrin, you are of your father the devil, who do you think is at the control helm today? The devil.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not only is it the same family, it's the same process.
Wow. The second episode, we're going to be talking about what was the turning point in 1913. What is fiat, all in caps, FIAT, fiat currency versus asset-backed currency? What are trades? What is the sole purpose of the Fed interest rate? Role of the U.S. Treasury? How do the indictments fit in to the monetary system shift? And where does the U.S. Treasury, the Chinese elders, and the International Court and lawyers of the DOJ fit in? What is their role in the shift for humanity into the new golden age? So that's going to be our second episode. If you want to make any comments on that, or we can buzz through.
Well, I mean, let's just go through them, because if I start doing this, the intro
I
is going to be the longest one out there.
Exactly. So. Okay. All right. So the third episode is we're going to talk about spiritual warfare, connecting the dots, the history, draining the swamp. Who is the swamp? Are we witnessing the fight for good over evil, a spiritual war? Who were those responsible for creating the rules of our society, and who carries out those rules? We're going to be talking about the Revolutionary War, the 13 colonies, the 1983 peace treaty with England. What did it do? Christopher Columbus comes to discover America, but he's under a Spanish flag. So how did we end up under British rule? We're going to talk all about that, the Revolutionary War, and basically all the wars. What is the role of the City of London, the ruling families, the church, the Catholic Church, now the Vatican, the ruling families? So we're going to talk about sort of like the triangle in London, and the peace treaty of 1783. Was that indeed ever ratified? And do we live under a republic or a corporation? And what does all this mean? And most importantly, what we can do about it. So I would guess, Jim, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't think there was something that we could be doing about all of this.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The part here is knowledge is power, and if you have the knowledge, you now know that you are enslaved, and you have a process to remove slavery and take back control. We move it from control of 13 families to control of we the people.
Okay. And some people will be shocked to learn on a deeper level that we have been slaves, and we'll discuss all that. In our fourth episode, we're going to talk about history setting the stage. Was our sovereignty usurped under trickery? And if so, can we regain it? When you purchase property, are you given a deed of ownership or a deed of use? And what does that mean? What was the role of the American Revolutionary War, the Treaty of Paris, the American Civil War? What country were we indebted to, and did that break our backs after the Civil War? What role did the banksters, I just have to call them banksters, play in all this? Why was the Act of 1871? Oh, that's a big year. 1871, one of the biggest turning points to the demise of our country. Are we living under the original organic version of the Constitution or the altered version? And what does all this mean? How does it affect us? And is there something we can do to right the wrong? What is the difference between the corporation, which is all in caps, the Constitution of the United States of America, all in caps, versus the Republic? And what must you know about the 10-mile square parcel called Washington, D.C.? Now, in the fifth episode, oh boy, I mean, this is something that many of us have learned, and some of us might be shocked to know, but we're going to talk about the birth certificate, the tyranny. Are we actually slaves, and are we owned? Are we sold upon birth? If so, how? And the word birth, B-E-R-T-H, admiralty law, the birth certificate. Boy, that's pretty deep. We're going to talk about all that because it's really important for us to know if we want to regain our sovereignty and rise above and move out of what I call this matrix. The sixth episode, we're going to talk about the United Nations. Oh, everyone has thought, as did I years ago, thought, oh, the United Nations, how wonderful, world peace, all the countries are coming together. Not at all what we've been told, or not at all what it was created to be. The true reason. The Oversight Committee, the UN corporation, a commercial corporation formed in Vichy, France during World War II. Who formed the United Nations, and what was their ultimate goal? What is the deeper meaning of, quote, the territorial United States, the municipal United States, and the United States of America? It's very important for us to understand all of this. And as you said, as you always say, Jim, do your homework. And we'll be providing links, extra links throughout this series for people to take a deeper dive. Now, Series 7, knowledge is the key to understanding and knowing the enemy. Manipulation runs deep. Who is at the top of the pyramid or hierarchy chart of the church's rule? The Jesuits. Why was the Jesuit order, aka the Society of Jesus, formed in 1540? Who are some of their agencies? You may be surprised. Do they have ties to Satanism, the Vatican, IMF, World Bank, and Rockefeller Foundation, etc.? What is, we hear this often, mark of the beast? We hear about Baphomet. What does that represent? And does this relate to the Jesuits? How many versions of the Bible are there? And why? Which is the original? The Jesuits, some of their agencies, we're going to talk about that. Do they influence politics, economics, world currencies, religions? What is their relation with the Catholic Church, and what is their ultimate goal? Have they subtly proselytized the docile masses to believe in the church's doctrine over the law of God?
That's going to be a big one.
Yep. And that's all your area of expertise. We're so grateful to have you on this, Jim. It's really amazing. The eighth one, mind control, Operation Mockingbird, CIA, Project Orion, Project MK Ultra, Project Deep Dream. And we're going to also bring into that the whole ADHD. Number 9, our two-party system, its origin, hijacking the U.S. political system, taking control over our political system. The 10th series, the 10th episode, Who Controls the World? And we're going to do a review, a time for review, which is great. Episode 11. Oh, that's where we're going to dive into the Act of 1871 and what we need to know, the United States, all in caps, corporation, and who really owns this corporation. There are going to be some stunners here. Some people are going to, these are jaw-dropping. The 12th one, history we only thought we knew. And I love this. So I'm going to mention this here that you cover in your expose. They who own the law own the banks. They who own the law and the banks own the corporation. They who own the law and the banks and the corporations own the media. They who own the law and the banks and the corporations and media own the governments. And they who own the law and the banks and corporations and media and governments own the world. So we're going to dig around on that one. The House of Rothschild, the common law crown temple in the center of London. What is the Knights Templar? The Magna Carta, where does that fit in? So that's going to be a pretty deep one too. Number 13, we're going to talk money. Let's talk money, explaining the financial system. Who controls all the banks? So we've mentioned a little bit on this, and we're going to take a deep dive into the global collateral accounts, etc. 14th episode, the central banking system. How does it work? The never-ending cycle of enslavement. Have the central bankers rigged the system for failure, and are they covering up the next scheme? What's the significance of previous Fed Chair Alan Greenspan's having used a phony signature? We're going to talk all about that. The central banks, the money supply, the stock market, etc. How it's manipulated, what has been happening in history. 15, the deep state, the world's shadow government. To what level have they infiltrated our country and the world? How does the deep state create their funding? What wars are we fighting? Who funds the wars? How does Scalia fit into this? Epstein, the Islamic movement to take over the world, if that indeed is an angle here. Who were the 3 presidents who decided not to be controlled by the deep state? And what happened with them? And what are the global collateral accounts and their purpose? We're going to talk all about the banking system there. Oh, episode 16, false flags. What is the meaning and origin and mainly the significance that false flags have played throughout our history and world conflicts and events? Has every war been staged with false flag operations and media propaganda lies? We're going to take a deep dive into that. 17, we're going to talk about confusion about the birth certificates. It appears to be a record belonging to us, but in fact, it is a registration document issued by a foreign government. Why is your name all in caps? And we're going to take a deep dive into the grand deception and what you need to know. Number 18, we've got 2 left here. 18 is titled Sick People. Have they been attacking and weakening humanity? What has been their agenda? Who is the deep state, the shadow government, and how do they and have they been funding themselves? And in our last episode, we're going to talk about our current revolution. Have we been told a lie about our current state of this world since the time we were born via our educational system and educational system in many churches by design? So, Jim, I don't know if you want to say anything before we close here, because we're going to keep it short today. We just want everybody to know what exciting news and information that we have up and coming for them. So if you wanted to share any words in closing here and the importance of this series.
Well, I think this series is very important to educate the people. They're going to get a lot of truths. When I started this out, I used a group of 100 people to test the concepts of the process of education, and then I just opened it up after a degree of success in using that sample base. But the one thing that I would say is come with paper and pencil in hand. Take notes. I would I would be uh, I would be available through you, of course, to to take questions. You go for purposes of if something is not as clear in understanding, maybe we could have a session of review on some people's questions that they might have. We will, if individuals are understanding this process as we get closer to the end and they begin to see things that they can't quite connect the dots to them, I would also be open for questions about how does this fit into this, okay, or where did this come from, or I'm seeing this and this and this. Are these linked together? Type thing. I would want the end result to this to be a successful learning tool to all of your audience, and not something that's just a conveying of information. And that's what I hope that your audience gains from this, is a shift of their knowledge of understanding your own history.
Actually, that's excellent. And on that note, I will mention as we go, and even from this intro, please leave your comments. I promise to read all the comments. You may have a question, something you want to add, something you've tied together. So please, this is a participatory event where we want, it's for we the people. And I believe there's no mistake why this has come about at this time for us to be doing this series. So I want to thank you, Jim, for all that you've done and you continue to do. And we greatly, greatly appreciate it in really helping humankind on a very, very high level and commitment. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, for all of us to ask ourselves as we go along here in this series, have our minds been programmed from the individuals in control over the media and entertainment with exactly and only with what they want us to believe? And if you so choose, you must take an active effort in reprogramming your mind, starting off with a big spoonful of truth and seeing through the grand illusion that our handlers have so keenly crafted for centuries to keep us in our cages inside their matrix. During this series of The Great Awakening on A Right to Know, we will review and take a look in the rearview mirror and discuss how to move forward into the new golden age. Make sure to follow the channel on Rumble and whatever other platforms you're seeing it on, so that you'll be notified of upcoming episodes, which you will not want to miss. A thumbs up really helps with the algorithms and getting the word out, which is the purpose that we're doing this, if you enjoyed the show. And we are on the precipice of change in the spiritual war. So please share this series with your friends and loved ones, so together we can unite and turn the tides in the right direction for humanity at such a time as this. We absolutely could not be in better hands than to be with Jim Pugh. And I want everybody to make sure to keep it tuned, because you have a right to know.